Good morning. It is 9:30 and I call this meeting to order. Ms. Sheffield, would you please call the roll?
Yes. Good morning, Commissioners. Commissioner Fernandez. Commissioner Furnishari. Commissioner Kennedy.
Here.
Commissioner Limons. Commissioner Sadwani.
Here.
Commissioner Sinai.
Here.
Commissioner Taylor.
Present.
Commissioner Toledo. Commissioner Turner.
Here.
Commissioner Vasquez.
Here.
Commissioner Yee.
Here.
Commissioner Ahmed.
Here.
Commissioner Akutagawa.
Here.
And Commissioner Anderson.
Here.
Thank you.
Good morning. Today is our second day of this set of meetings. Today is Tuesday, March 9, and we've gone through most of our agenda for this session. This morning at 10 a.m. we will have an education outreach panel, and at this time I'm going to ask for public comments, which, as we usually do at the beginning and ends of our meetings, we also do this as we come back from lunch. So if Katie, you could please read the instructions for public comment.
Yes, Chair. Good morning. In order to maximize transparency and public participation in our process, the Commissioners will be taking public comment by phone. To call in, dial the telephone number provided on the live stream feed. It is 877-853-5247. When prompted, enter the meeting ID number provided on the live stream feed. It is 989-3812-5973. When prompted to enter a participant ID, simply press the pound key. Once you have dialed in, you will be placed in a queue to indicate you wish to comment. Please press star 9. This will raise your hand for the moderator. When it is your turn to speak, you will hear a message that says, "The host would like you to talk," and to press star 6 to speak. If you would like to give your name, please state and spell it for the record. You are not required to provide your name to give public comment. Please make sure to mute your computer or live stream audio to prevent any feedback or distortion during your call. Once you are waiting in the queue, be alert for when it is your turn to speak, and please turn down the live stream volume. The Commission is taking their start of the meeting general public comment at this time. And we do have one person in the queue with their hand up, and I'd like to remind the callers to press star 9 to raise their hand. All right, so here we go.
Thank you. Please invite them in.
And the floor is yours.
Good morning. My name is Peter Cannon, and I just want to say that throughout the day yesterday, commissioners had mentioned various upcoming outreach events and that they were doing. And I want to point out to the commission that none of these are listed on the outreach calendar at this time. I checked again recently, but there's only one upcoming event currently listed, and I assume this might be an unintentional oversight as you transition to your new website. I wanted to point this out so your staff can move quickly to correct this important commitment to transparency, and so the public knows who the meetings are with as part of the education process. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, the outreach calendar will be updated as we do that. You can, of course, our meetings are listed under meetings, which are what we're doing primarily now are business meetings. So please look for that on the website. Thank you. Next caller, please.
Yes, Chair. The floor is yours.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Alejandra Ponce de Leon, Alejandra, last name Ponce, space DE, space Leon. I'm Senior Policy and Research Analyst with the Political Voice team at Advancement Project. Want to just thank you for all the deliberations. I know that there's been so much work that you've been leading and so much, again, I just want to really appreciate a lot of the intention placed in moving forward with community outreach and engagement. And in particular today, the reason that I'm calling is around the language access. I know that you have heard from, several organizations throughout this, yesterday and weeks, previous meetings about just the need and the importance of providing interpretation throughout the public meetings, not just during public comment. For us at Advancement Project, this is something that is very crucial and important when it comes to civic participation, given that language barrier is one of the major obstacles for a lot of communities, to be able to engage in all of these democratic processes. And recognizing that here in California, it's estimated that 1 in 5 Californians have identified as speaking English less than very well. It really just brings up the urgency of ensuring, at least for public meetings where you've been requested for translation, to provide the whole meeting with interpretation services, taking advantage of Zoom, taking advantage of other tools that might be available to be able to provide channels for folks to be able to engage in, and not just, to be able to be interpreted, for their public comment, but to hear all the discussion, because it's very fruitful to hear all the process that you're going through and the thinking and the questions that you all are discussing. And this is something that's vital to just make redistricting less, abstract and more tangible and more direct for communities, especially like low English proficient communities. And so I just want to encourage you, and I know that you all are looking to different options and really trying to weigh in on the cost and how to do it, how to move it forward in the way that, is responsive. And I know as you're trying to be as responsive to communities, but just really want to uplift as well from our organization, how important it is to be able to provide interpretation throughout the whole meeting. So just wanted to say that and thank you.
Okay, and we have one more caller. And the floor is yours.
Hello, this is Renee Westalusk. I've been having problems this morning trying to get to the meeting drop-down box on your website where you can get to the agendas, minutes, and handouts, and I can't get to the agenda or the handouts or the minutes that page. So I don't know what's going on. Is someone working on the website?
Thank you very much for that information. I don't know at this time. We will certainly look into that and see if there is an issue from our end. We might have please feel free to call in to the office and try to work this out, because that is extremely important. Thank you for that information.
Is the office number that 916-323
03 let's see
0323.
23.
Okay, and then I have one other question. If you're having difficulty in doing the draw cacommunity.org, where you're trying to draw a map and you're not sure of the instructions, or is there a phone number available to get tech help in figuring out how to draw the maps?
Commissioner Kennedy, could you there is information. Commissioner Kennedy, could you address that, please?
There is. I will have to look it up.
Yeah, I didn't know. Is that actually on the tool itself? I believe there might be. Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Yee.
Up in the tool, the upper right, there's a help button, and you can go to live chat tech support.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, because any issues with that, please get back in touch with us. We do want to know to make sure that is working well.
And that was everyone in the queue, Chair.
Thank you very much. Do we have any additional comment? Oh, Commissioner Vasquez. And then
Yeah, I just wanted to acknowledge the callers' challenges with the website. It's happened to me a couple of times. Everything is pretty accessible from the menu bar, which isn't always readily apparent, especially if you're on a mobile device like an iPad or a phone. You have to click up into the menu to get into meetings, and then which will take you to the right page to get you to the handouts. Same with the outreach calendar. Whereas like on the home, if you're just on the home page and scrolled to upcoming meetings, so today's meeting, there's not a way to get to either the whole meeting. There's not a readily apparent way to get to like a list of all of our meetings, which also then include the handouts. So the menu bar is sort of where right now the website is designed to like take you to all the detailed information. So the homepage, I think, is just not quite as intuitive. So just as a flag for folks, the menu bar is where most things are located.
thank you. Commissioner Sabani.
Yes, thank you. Thank you to the callers, and thank you to Commissioner Vasquez just for raising that. This issue has actually been on my mind since callers called in yesterday, just, with some concerns about being able to find items and ensuring that the transparency of our documents, of our meetings. I know there was a caller yesterday who had asked for the videos, for transcripts. I think this has been a problem for us from the very beginning. I think that we're in a new stage now. We have new staffing, we have a beautiful new website, but I'm wondering if we might want to just put a little greater oversight to not simply the creation of the website, but in particular this transparency piece about really just monitoring to ensure that all of these components, all of the outreach meetings, right, that commissioners are going out to do are being placed somewhere on our website. I think that's something that we had committed to doing. I'm wondering if we want to formalize that. My understanding is that there is a kind of an informal website committee of Commissioner Taylor and Commissioner Kennedy. I know that there's potentially the Lessons Learned Committee has kind of a piece with transparency. So I just wanted to raise that and see if there might be an interest just to kind of formalize that process. I feel bad when we get callers calling in saying, where is this, where is that? And I feel like we're sometimes unprepared to really have one of us as commissioners be responsive to those needs. And perhaps this might be a way of doing that and just providing additional support to staff.
Thank you, Commissioner. There was at one point the troubleshooting subcommittee who was addressing that. I didn't know of others, but putting together a group, certainly with the Commissioner, with Director Seha, but Commissioner Ahmad and then Commissioner Sinai.
Pass.
Commissioner Sinai?
I also think that there is some confusion between outreach, the zone outreach and the meetings we're doing, and the public input session. I mean, not the public input, the public education sessions, or our PowerPoint. And I have mentioned this before, and I would like us to think about including both. Right now, we include just the meetings. I mean, just the PowerPoint presentation. The education sessions. But we're all doing a lot of zone outreach and state outreach. And I think that's where folks are asking where those are. I did start a list last time for myself and the people I've done some of that with. Just a simple one of the name of the organization, the zone, and the date that it happened, just so that people can see that we are out in the zones and who we've met with, and they can give us input if we're missing someone. But that is something that Commissioner Vasquez and I have brought up from the beginning, that it really is helpful for all of us, especially even us as commissioners. Sometimes you can look through that list and go, oh, I hadn't thought about reaching out to that group in my zone. I'll do that. So I'd like to bring that up again as something that we can provide as well.
Sorry, could you elaborate on the outreach? So that's a meeting. That's not just a contact. Is that? I believe the issue is something that some of the public could attend.
No, I think there is confusion right now because we talk about outreach, and sometimes we're talking about the public education sessions, which are the public meetings, or the meetings that we're doing in partnership with, hosted by other groups, and we're doing the PowerPoints. And then all of us within our zones and other places are doing outreach as well to ask questions. What's the best way to engage your community? What's the best way to do outreach? And I think when we talk about it, we mix up the two, and I can understand why the community is confused. But I think it is helpful for us to be listing all our one-on-one conversations as well as our presentations on the website.
Okay. Yes, I agree, because that's just the way, I think it's our terminology that is very confusing, because it's, let's say, maybe outreach contacts. And then because when you say outreach, it does to me, even it sounds like that's some sort of meeting. But no, these are contacts. And then any kind of meeting, I'm assuming, is listed on the outreach calendar that someone could attend. So that's certainly something that needs to be cleared up and put forth on the calendar. Thank you.
This is a follow-up. Why don't we put this on the agenda for the input committee, since we've got a few of everybody on that committee?
Actually, I was going to charge that with basically the outreach to come up with a plan of how to take care of that and how to list those things such that it's to clarify that. Any other commissioners? Do I see Commissioner Vasquez? Commissioner Taylor?
As it relates to some of the feedback we get regarding the website, excuse me, and Commissioner Kennedy might also chime in on this. I know before we start our meetings, I try to do a dry run of all the tabs to see if they're operating, and I see many of the other commissioners do so when they hear the feedback. But I try to do a dry run of all the tabs to make sure that they're working prior to us starting the meeting. So some of those issues that come up will be new to us as they're addressed from the callers. So I try to give a little bit of quality control before we start our meetings.
Thank you. I actually did that last night. I went through everything last night, but I believe there is an issue with I access mine on a on a laptop, on a computer, and I believe there's an issue with mobile access or iPad because those are different platforms, and I believe there's a need possibly for a small committee to take this on. Commissioner Kennedy?
I've also, well, first of all, we commission and public, we ask that we all understand that the website is still a work in process. It will be a living thing, but it's also still in the process of getting everything since July moved over to this new website. The one item that I had brought up with staff several months ago is the issue of meeting transcripts, and I just want to take the opportunity to ask for an update from staff. I know that the videos, even if they're not yet up on the new website, the videos as recently as I think mid-February meetings are already are available on the old website. So again, all of that content is still in the process of being moved over from the old website to the new website to the extent that it is related to the 2020 commission. But there are 0 transcripts. Even going back to our first meeting as the full commission back in August, I don't believe that the full transcript is up on the old website, nor are any of the other transcripts. So I just wanted to check and see what the status is. And if staff can find that out for us in the course of today, that's great. Otherwise, please report back at the next meeting.
Yes, if Director Hernandez, if you could please look into that, because that's absolutely true, and that was an issue. There's also the transcripts. At one point, we really did discuss and had put into place actually a meeting summary, just an action points, just a very brief, but and that has been a constant request as well. I know there were some staffing issues involved there, but I would like you to look into getting that going again, because even if you have right now, the only way someone could look at trying to figure out what happened in a meeting is you have to look at the entire video. A transcript certainly helps, but it would be nice to have a short action summary. So any other, I see Commissioner Sapani.
Well, yeah, just to go back, I mean, this was kind of my point. Do we want to appoint a small subcommittee that's specifically going to oversee this and make sure that it's happening? I mean, I think there were issues in the past, but moving forward, we can make sure that we're all on point and making sure that it's also getting done, so that when issues do arise, when we have callers call in, we can say, hey, we have a subcommittee that's specifically looking at these transparency issues, and this is what we've done thus far, and who of us commissioners will kind of pick up that specific piece, I guess, is my ongoing question.
Commissioner Taylor.
Yeah, I have no problems volunteering for such committee if so desired.
Thank you. Would this be in the purview of an existing subcommittee at all, Commissioner Kennedy?
Well, as Commissioner Sadwani mentioned, Director Ceja wasn't the chair of the commission, and so didn't formally appoint a website subcommittee, but did ask Commissioner Taylor and me to serve unofficially as a website committee. And I would say that both Commissioner Taylor and I would be happy to take this on if you want to designate us as an official subcommittee.
I think that's a very because I was going to put together a website subcommittee, so not realizing that technically existed already. I do see Commissioner Fernandez question there before I sort of create this. I was going to say, who else is interested? Commissioner Fernandez.
Oh no, I'm not interested in that. I mean, I am interested, but I have my hands full. I just wanted to let you know that Commissioner Fornashari and I are we're looking into the agenda minutes, that piece of it for future. So that would be separate, I believe, I just wanted to make sure we differentiated between the two.
Yes, that certainly is a different task in my mind. Excellent. So Commissioner Ceja.
Hi, yes, thank you so much. Thank you. It was an ad hoc committee when we were trying to launch the website, but it's apparent that there's a need for continued work on the website. And like Commissioner Kennedy said, this is a living document. So if something doesn't make sense, we do have the ability to move things around immediately so that it does make sense for the public and makes it easier to navigate. So yeah, I guess today we're making a formal committee out of an ad hoc, which is great. Thank you. Yes. So, and all videos have been moved over from the 2010 commission. So if you don't see transcripts, it's because they don't exist. I did take the time 2 weeks ago to port over all the documents and all the videos. So everything that's there is all we have.
On the 2010 video, there never was any. If you went to click on the link, there was no video there on the on our old website. Is there a video there now?
Well, I tried yesterday. I clicked on a few tabs and I did see videos. It might be that when the website crashed, we lost some of that content.
No, it had been sort of taken down and archived, and because we've been asking about these for quite a while, we were trying to look at specifically how line drawing process went, and those videos just didn't exist. But there had been efforts to try to get those back, and so we have not further pursued that. But if you could make sure that they aren't just placeholders.
We'll figure it out. I do have videos from the 2010 website that we were getting ready to port over when we had the idea of meshing the two websites, but that's no longer the case. So I'll work with Raul to figure that out. I think we have the video files. I have them on my backup drive.
Excellent. Okay. Commissioner Sadmani.
Sure, this is just a general question then, and maybe our court reporter can answer it. There's been a court reporter at all of our meetings, and I assume capturing the transcript of our meetings. So I'm just wondering what happens with those transcripts that are captured, and can we use them for our website? I mean, there was a specific request yesterday for transcripts, so that I'm just wondering why we don't have transcripts available.
Well, I do know there's a process, a step involved. It isn't just, there is a dictation, typing it up, that there's and then of course, it's the charge. I do not know if the court reporter has actually been specifically asked to do that. So I'd have to ask the staff. If the staff could get back to us to look into what is the status of getting transcripts and going back to get our transcripts. So with that, I'd like to, I'm going to establish a website subcommittee. Is that the appropriate name, or do you want to have a website follow-up, or is website sufficient, your title? Great. So
maybe even website and transparency.
Well, then it's transparency of lots of different things. This is just keeping the website, all the documents on the website, and keeping that flowing. To say transparency, that means, they'd be looking into what's happening in the meetings. It's a bit too inclusive, I believe. I mean, what does the subcommittee think?
I'm fine with it being called website, but we will certainly be looking at the website as a vehicle for transparency.
Okay. Perfect. Yeah, website, the website subcommittee, and it will consist of Commissioner Kennedy, who is the Democrat, and Commissioner Taylor, who is a Republican. So yes, they're both from the South, but that's okay. So moving on, it is almost 10 o'clock, and we have a education panel, and I'm going to hand this over to, I believe it's Commissioners Fernandez and Vasquez, who will be running this group. Anytime you're ready.
Just trying to make sure that all of our panelists are here. I see Raquel, I see Frank. I am not seeing Carol. Oh, yep.
There's Carol.
Right on cue, Carol. Thank you. First of all, thank you so much to our wonderful panelists for their flexibility and for their interest and commitment to educating us, the commission, and the public today about how we might engage school and education stakeholders in our outreach and engagement on statewide redistricting efforts. And I also think, just for the community, as you're thinking about both your communities of interest and local redistricting efforts, I think it's pretty safe to say that schools are often community hubs and really huge reference points for community members in terms of who they consider their neighbors, where they consider sort of their safe places, and really, like I said, schools serve as really strong community hubs and anchors. So I'm really excited today to have our three panelists share a bit about their organization, their perspectives on how organizing and engagement with their stakeholders has gone in the past, and then we'll save about half an hour for just sort of a dialogue between commissioners and the panelists to talk through some ideas. So I figured we would go in alphabetical order. So first up, I'm excited to introduce Carol Kosovar. Carol Kosovar is the former president of the California State PTA. She's worked as an attorney and a journalist, an ombudsman person, and is the parent to two children who graduated from San Francisco public schools. She's an editorial contributor at Ed 100, a website I very much recommend if you are interested in learning about the education system in California. And she also received the 2020 Shirley Igo Advocate of the Year Award. So thank you, Carol, so much for joining us here today.
Well, thanks so much for including the PTA. I did send everyone a map of California with all the PTA sections. Now, is that something that was distributed to everyone, or are you going to point it out, or I don't have to discuss it?
Yes, we've received it. It's been distributed to the commission as well as posted on our website. So feel free to reference it in your comments.
Terrific. So let me just give you a little bit of the structure of the PTA. We're part of a national organization. California is the largest state PTA and the largest parent advocacy for children and families organization in the state. We're organized throughout the state, which is why I sent you that chart. And we have about 29 different districts by geographic area. So I, for example, am in District 2. And if you looked at that map, that means I'm from San Francisco. If I was from Los Angeles, I would be in District 1. And those numbers are just by the timeline in which those districts were created. And when I talk about a district, we have a state PTA that is organized throughout the state. And then when we break it down into districts, each one of those areas supports PTAs within that geographic area. So for example, I'll do San Francisco, which is one of the relatively smaller districts, if you can believe it. And we have about 65 PTA schools in San Francisco. So we provide support to those schools. Each one of those schools is their own 501c3, and they have meetings monthly. The districts have meetings, the state has meetings, and all of them put out information, and all of them encourage parents and students to be engaged. The one thing that we've sort of ramped up this year is the importance of civic engagement. We actually passed what we call a position statement, affirming our support about the importance of voting and civic engagement. And so the way we take positions on things is, for example, with the Redistricting Commission, I'm representing the PTA right now, and I put in a motion for our next board of directors meeting, asking that the organization be authorized to work closely with the Redistricting Commission to get information out to our members. So I have to wait for them to take action, because they take action like every month. So that's where I am on this, but I will give you a little bit of background, because We did a lot of the same information with the census. And since the census is so closely connected to this, in fact, it's critical to this, we provided information on our website. We sent information out to our PTA districts. Also within districts, there are things called councils for a smaller geographic area, and then to the PTAs at the schools, telling them about why this is important. The other things we do is we advertise events through social media. So we have Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, emails that gets information out. We also sometimes make presentations at some of our meetings about these issues. So when I think about how that partnership could go, those are some of the things that we did when we were helping with the census, and waiting to see, hopefully, that we can positively do that again, but I'm waiting for that board meeting to confirm it. One of the other things that I've just discovered, it's not anything the PTA uses, but it's used in a lot of communities. It's called Nextdoor. I don't know whether you've ever used it, but it seems to really grab people in their local communities. And so, for example, if you had a meeting that was coming up in a particular community, we could try to, you could try, or we could try to get information on all our social media, but that's something that you yourself might be thinking about depending on what that community is. We would depend in large part on the commission getting us the information that's ready to distribute. Sometimes we actually do the graphics, but the more complete and professional it's looking, the easier it is for us to get it out. So those are the kinds of things that we could help with, and I'm hoping that we will. That was short, but I hope it was sweet.
Great, thank you so much, Carol. Yeah, and like I said, I think we'll have a really robust discussion. We're a commission who likes to ask questions, so I'm sure we'll have more opportunities to get more details from you. So thank you. Next, I am glad to introduce Frank Pesce, who is the Director of History Social Science at the Sacramento County Office of Education. Frank led the effort to create the Count Me In Census 2020 curriculum, which taught students the history of the U.S. Census, its uses, and the importance of a complete count. Along with these curriculum modules, Frank created the Tell Your Story guide. Students across the state used this guide to create information and action campaigns, encouraging participation in the 2020 census.
Well, hello, everybody. And is it okay if I share my screen? I've got some slides there. Is that okay?
Yes.
Alrighty, I will do that. There we go. So with that, you should be seeing my screen, and let me move my, it's like mission control here on my computers when I get all these things together. Okay, so again, thank you I'm so happy to be here and be able to speak to you all about our efforts and share some ideas of what we think we might be able to do to help support the redistricting campaigns and efforts around. So as Angela said, we were in charge of creating a set of curriculum modules for the census. So we had been working with the Complete Count Committee, I guess before it was the Complete Count Committee back in 2017, 2018, to help them think through an education outreach campaign for the census. So what that resulted in was the Count Me In curriculum. We have 18, I believe, modules between 5th, 8th, 11th, and 12th grades, and the how-to guide. I added this to the slide, but the link to those modules is there on the screen there, the bit.ly that you can see there. And what this effort is, it's an effort to educate students and teachers about the U.S. Census. It was really interesting as we were doing our trainings across the state, how many teachers didn't really know all about the census, and myself included. I taught middle and high school, and The most that I taught was that it started in 1790 and that they used the data. That was about it. And so through this campaign, we were really able to educate teachers about the importance of a complete count, how it has been used and, dare I say, misused, throughout history. And so this is one thing we really wanted to do is to make sure that students had a better understanding of how the census worked, what all the data were used for, so we could make sure that they understood the importance of a complete count. But beyond that, what we also wanted to do, and each of these modules has kind of a call to action, the so what. So we know it's an important thing. We know that the census is hugely integral in everything from redistricting to apportionment of votes and everything in between. So what are we going to do about it? And so that's where we created the how-to guide. And so SCOE staff, which was me, I went across the state between August and October of 2019 and trained about 1,000, if not more, probably about 1,500 teachers across the state on the importance of the census and then on the modules themselves. So that was one bit of the outreach that we did, was around this education campaign. The other piece that we did, our county office was in charge of supporting efforts, census outreach efforts for Sacramento, Yolo, and Placer counties. So the three were kind of together in a consortium. And so what we did is we leveraged the resources that we had, both the funding and these curricular resources that we created, to coordinate teams of students from across our areas to create campaigns. Now, of course, the pandemic and the COVID kind of shut down really, put a damper on a lot of those things, because so many of the things that we had planned for on-site school events had to shift to a virtual mode. We were still able to do that largely, have a lot of different campaigns. Again, as students were creating public service announcements and videos, a lot of those were, very easy to transition to a virtual mode. So we were able to really still get the word out there. What we also did is shifted our means of outreach to look at where students would be. So in the beginning of the lockdown and the shutdown for schools became that community hub for everything from resources to school meals to textbooks, all those different things. So what we did is we partnered with our friends there at the different counties and at the different school districts to deliver census materials through those different means. We coordinated with a local community organization that we had been working with as well, because that community center in the Fruit Ridge area became a hub as well. So we did that. I connected with our early learning department because they were still offering limited but in-person resources, and so they were we were able to get materials out that way. Excuse me. And then social media campaigns, sending out texts to tens of thousands of individuals and trying to keep everybody up on the latest of what we were doing. So that's the first part of our effort, really was around the census, getting students and the community really involved in that. I think we'd seen some successes, some increases in our self-reporting rate and all that, which is a great thing. Now I think some just initial ideas that we have, and I know we'll have a lot of time to speak about it later, is that we kind of maybe mirror that effort that we did around the census, because we have that awareness that's already been raised, now around redistricting. A couple of our modules are around that, around redistricting and what has been done, or that what will be done. And now that we're there, I think it's a great opportunity for us to kind of come full circle and say, okay, now the data are in, let's look at it. What is this going to look like? What is that? So a couple of things that I have listed here. We have a great statewide network of teachers that we've connected to that have created the modules for us in the past and have created other modules. I had shared this as we were in our planning, is that I'm happy to go back to those folks and see if we can get some of our teachers to maybe create a couple of new modules around redistricting. What does that look like, and how do you actually do it? It's a great way to get it out of the history government sector and maybe move it into the math, and so look at some of our math teachers that we have as well. And then really leverage our statewide infrastructure, because outside of all of this other work, I'm in charge of another project called the CLICK project, which brings together educators from across the state to better implement the new history social science framework that's out. So we are in our last year of operation in that. We've got a 5,000 to 6,000 teachers that we've been working with over the last few years, and all of our county office of education partners. So I'm happy to do that. I know that there was a presentation to our click leads last month, which was great. Alicia was able to do that, and generally what happens from that is they get really excited and then inundate the speaker with calls of, okay, now come to my area and please help us out with that. So I think we've already started that leveraging, but I think really to move forward with that would be something that I'd be very happy and very excited to engage in. So that is pretty much what we've done at SCOE and some of the ideas that we have. I will stop sharing my screen now and thank you very much. And I look forward to our conversation that we're going to have.
Great. Thanks so much, Frank. And last but definitely not least, especially to me, I'm happy to introduce my friend and former colleague, Raquel Maiden. She is the Director of External Affairs for the California School Boards Association. She leads 14 public affairs and community engagement representatives across the state. Her team is responsible for engaging and facilitating school board member participation and education advocacy efforts at the state and federal levels. Previously, Raquel worked as the Chief Policy Analyst and Senior District Representative for a legislator for 13 years. And in 2012, Raquel Marquez Maiden finished two terms of 8 years total as a trustee for the San Ysidro School District Governing Board.
Thank you, Angela, for inviting me, and thank you, the commissioners, for allowing me to present today. As Angela said, we met at CSBA as a former PACER myself. I started off in representing the San Diego and Imperial County division for CSBA. But before that, while I was working for a legislator, I was a school board member myself. I ran right out of college, decided to get myself into public service. And from that moment forward, I seeked out the California School Boards Association, who I now work for training and advocacy training, and also my role, to learn more about my role as a school board member. And so now I'm here, no longer a school board member, but representing a lot of school districts in the state. CSBA has 21 regions throughout the state, and the leadership comprised pretty much the board of directors and 280 delegates that represent those separate regions. In total, CSBA represents 1,000 school districts and over 5,000 school board members in California. And in the last 3 years, CSBA ramped up their advocacy efforts and their grassroots efforts through what's called the Public Affairs and Community Engagement Representative Program, where Angela and I work together. And there are, as she mentioned, 14 PACERs working in these 21 divisions. And there's currently 4 actually in LA County. It's such a dense population, we had to have 4 representatives there. I lead the team, and we work with trustees closely in keeping them informed and engaged on what's going on around the state. And also we organize a lot of advocacy efforts with our legislators and help school board members advocate for policy that assists school districts in serving students. And it's been one of the most rewarding things I've seen, because in this time right now with COVID coming and really taking over a lot of the priorities school district had, we started seeing a huge dynamic and a change. And so these advocacy efforts really became more at the forefront, but also the engagement of school board members in their communities has become a lot more important as well. Why? Because school districts are not just teaching students now, anymore. They're also feeding entire communities during this pandemic. And so it's been essential for us to keep them engaged. And the last year, we've ramped up monthly, if not bi-monthly, depending on the region, meetings with our trustees, making sure they have all the information at their fingertips when it comes to policies that are changing at the state level, but also in engaging them more with different organizations within their communities. Right now, more than ever, our school districts are engaging with community and nonprofits, with chambers of commerce to try to provide for families in need and for people and assisting people with work development, finding jobs, anything that really ramped up because of the pandemic. these districts have been trying to find resources for. And we've been really working hard with not just advocating at the state level for legislation that will help school districts reopen, but also working, in grassroots efforts to make sure the communities are taken care of locally. And so our pacers put together groups and table talks and also roundtables to make sure that our board members have these tools that they need to make sure they represent their constituency. Not only that, but also have the camaraderie between board members when they're going through such a tough time. When things go wrong, board members take care of their communities, but they're not always acknowledged for that. And right now it's a lot of pressure. So our 14 representatives are throughout the state. Like I said, there's 4 in LA, and then the rest are spread out throughout Southern California and Northern California. And we work closely with making sure our board members are engaged. We provide information on things such as legislation that's been passed that will affect school districts. We provide information and connect them to the trainings that CSBA has to offer. And many of those trainings are things that come up with the climate and what's going on at the moment. So yesterday CSBA had a redistricting webinar where we really explain to the trustees what CVRA is and what it is that is entailed when it comes to redistricting in their own local school districts. So more and more we're getting that information out there, because even as we face a pandemic, we still have things that code, that laws, that legislation puts at the forefront for school board members to think of. Even when there is something so large as a pandemic going on, they still have to abide by a lot of things, and CVRA is one of them. And so I'd like to help in whatever way I can to take information back from the commission to our board of directors to see how we may become engaged with our board members. My effort is really to be an advocate for my communities, and California is my community. I've lived here my entire life. I've worked here my entire life, and my kids are growing up here. They're going to be there their entire life, I'm sure. Nobody leaves California. Especially in San Diego, that's where I live. We don't leave San Diego. I do have to say that more and more we've been participating with organizations where I've met Commissioner Patricia Sinai from MANA. We've been working with organizations like the Chicano Federation. We've been working with organizations like the education committees for the different chambers of commerce. And so collaboration is key. It's shown us during the pandemic that when you collaborate with organizations outside of your own, we can get more done for our communities. And I think that's the way it should be done with the Redistricting Commission. I think PTA, the county offices of ed, the curriculum that Frank has developed, that can all be spread out throughout our state in a collaborative fashion to make sure that our communities are engaged, they're educated, and that they come to an entity that they trust, which is schools. They always trust their schools when it comes to anything. In my former position, very long time ago, I worked as a community health certificated application assistant for healthy families back when Medi-Cal had the Healthy Families Program. And one thing that I remember very clearly was people were always afraid, especially where I live. I'm literally 1.7 miles from the border. People were always afraid to seek out medical help or Medi-Cal because of repercussions that could come with their immigration status or anything of that nature, privacy, issues that they may have. And when I went out as an application assistant, a community health worker, and provided information through the school district, families were more likely to seek these resources because they trust schools. And that's one thing that I want to press today is schools are trusted entities in our communities. They feed our families, as I said earlier. They provide information. And so working with our parent organizations, our nonprofits, and our school districts together, I think we could be very effective at informing our public on what we need to do as a state for our redistricting efforts.
Thank you so much, Raquel, and thank you again for our panelists. With that, do we have any questions from the commission, from commissioners?
And go ahead, Commissioner Vasquez, in terms of if you want to.
Got it. Let me make sure I can see everybody. I see Commissioner Kennedy and then Commissioner Turner.
Thank you all for being with us. And I agree that engaging schools and even, young school children, I've seen that be an incredibly effective way of motivating families to engage civically. I came across a few months ago information about the state's community engagement initiative. And San Bernardino County Schools are one of the lead agencies for that. I wanted to get your sense of whether there is any possible tie-in between our work and the community engagement initiative. I mean, should I really pursue San Bernardino County Schools or any of the other lead agencies of the community engagement initiative to see how we can partner with them? Thanks.
I could probably answer that. I'd say yes, it's always an effort that helps. We've had efforts like this before. When it came to Wi-Fi, we have an agency in Imperial County that takes care of some of the Wi-Fi needs for suburban communities and smaller districts, smaller areas that aren't usually sparsely populated. And even though they're regionally in one part of the state, they do service the rest of the state. And so I think it's a very good way of going about getting information out, especially if they've already been one of the lead agencies for the California effort.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And I would say my one of my leads for actually that region is from San Bernardino County Office of Ed, the Superintendent of Schools, and so I can definitely put you in contact with that individual if you wanted. You've got a sympathetic ear because we work very closely together, and she's been with me for the last 3 years, 4 years on these efforts. So yeah,
that would be very much appreciated.
Great,
thanks.
All right.
I think, and just to add context before we get to Commissioner Turner and then Commissioner Sinai, I think context for the commission, in the last 10 years, public education has gone through a huge transformation where historically, education was largely administered at the state level. And in the last 10 years, a lot, we're in the age of local control, and school districts and county offices of education over the last 10 years have had to do a lot more work in engaging community partners and doing stakeholder engagement. And this statewide effort is sort of a response to calls for support from the state to do sort of that community building. And so for redistricting, I think what we offer as a commission is an opportunity for some low stakes community partnership between, schools and their community partners. Education can get really political and high conflict. And here I feel like we are presenting a really a good entry point to building some of those relationships that can extend beyond redistricting into much more thoughtful partnerships with communities. So I think Commissioner Kennedy, your sort of touch point with San Bernardino, I think can be used as a model for the rest of us in our zone outreach for sure. All right, Commissioner Turner, and then I saw Commissioner Sinai.
Thank you, Commissioner Vasquez. I wanted to say to Carol, Frank, and Raquel in alphabetical order, of course, how much I appreciate the presentation and was just thoroughly impressed with the level of engagement and outreach through the census, the work that you've already done. And so I participated a lot in the census work and outreach as an ACBO in the Central Valley. And so listening as you kind of recounted some of the efforts that you put into place and the connections that you made, even through Nextdoor, all of that, I was like, yes, and this is why we were and are as successful as we were, because of the engagement that looked a little bit different than the traditional approaches that we've used. So I just wanted to say how much I appreciated that. And then coming from the Central Valley, I'd be definitely interested in any of the Central Valley. I do have your map that's printed and out and looking at it for contacts in those areas to ensure that we are reaching out, not just for redistricting, but even for purposes beyond. I do think it's a great partnership and coalition that can be built. Thank you.
Commissioner Sinai.
Thank you, everybody. This was wonderful. I had two questions. One is we are on a tight timeline, though the timeline was extended, and so I was wondering if how realistic is it to try to create some type of curriculum that we can implement, similar to the one that was done for the census. And then my second question is, having been a former school board member, there's a lot going on. And now with the pandemic, you all just brought up how much more is going on. And so I'm wondering, how careful do we need to be to add something more onto the schools and school districts? Obviously, our message needs to be redistricting is important to you because education is important to you, and redistricting means better policies and better, representative and money. But I do think that you all are just an amazing vehicle, but I also want the reality check during pandemic. How much can we really expect, or how do you advise us to move forward?
I could speak to the curriculum development piece of it. We recently leveraged our statewide entity, our statewide kind of group of leads, to create a series of lessons that were optimized for digital learning. And that start to finish was about an 8-week process for us. It was pretty amazingly fast, I guess, thing. We kind of put it out as, hey, we've got this issue, what do we think? And within a week or two, we'd identified 30-ish teachers that wanted to write some modules for us. And then it was a peer review process, but they're up on our website now, and it's completely done. So I think if we kind of lit the fire and put that out there, and what I'm thinking is, in particular, probably creating just a couple, maybe 4 modules, a couple at the 5th, 8th grade, a couple at the 11th, 12th grade level. So it's not a huge lift. And I know I've already talked to some of my colleagues about this, and they would be very interested in it. So I would anticipate it'd probably be a similar-ish process. I'd say 6 to 8 weeks of some sort of development for them. And what we're looking at as we're creating these modules is a couple 2-3 day kind of look at things. And so we have an opportunity, as I said before, to kind of go cross-curricular with this, particularly with redistricting. We've got data now. So what does this mean? We can go to our math teachers and engage those folks. And I think to the point, to your point, very well taken, of do they need one more thing, given to them? Probably the answer is no. I've got 3 kids. I've got a 3rd grader, a 7th grader, and a 10th grader. So I'm living either the dream or the nightmare. I don't know whichever one you want to talk about with distance learning. But I know one thing that all of my colleagues are very interested in is getting more resources. So I think it would be one more resource that we can provide to teachers to say, hey, if it's not abandoning what you're already teaching and doing this, but it's another way of thinking of how you're doing it. And that was really how we created, that was the impetus and kind of our thinking around those count me in modules. It wasn't just, here's a standalone module on the census, stop teaching what you're teaching, then teach this for 2 or 3 days. It's how do we teach westward expansion in 5th or 8th grade using the census? How can you teach about taxation and about, post World War II, suburbanization using the census? And so that's really what we were looking at. We created those in a way that a teacher could very easily plug it in and say, okay, this is my Louisiana Purchase, kind of module, but we're looking at census data, pre and post, Louisiana Purchase. So that's how I can see us using the redistricting, opportunity for this as well. Is to what we want is for teachers to be able to use these modules forever, not just in the census years or the year preceding the census, but if I can teach as an 8th grade teacher, if I can teach westward expansion and pre and post Civil War and Reconstruction using census data, that's a thing I can do every year with all of my kids. So that's kind of the idea that we're looking at. And I think we have a few examples now of how we've done this pretty quickly in a turnaround. And so I think, if I can get the word out to them, and Alicia, I know I wasn't at the meeting, but maybe if you speak a minute to, I don't know, I've heard that the feedback was great from our leads, but when you talked to them last week, I don't know if there was anything that came out of that as well.
I'll just respond to you, right? No, it was great to be involved in the meeting. Everybody was very inviting. There were many questions and they were very engaged. So hopefully it started off a good partnership for us as we move forward. So thank you, Frank.
Great. Yeah. Well, and that's the thing that we'll continue that conversation because we've got all those leads there now that are very interested and they've got the teachers. So it's an opportunity for us to really connect with them.
To answer the part about school districts and school board members, let me first just add a little bit to Frank's curriculum discussion. If there's a curriculum out there, we all see the importance of redistricting. We also the importance of census, and we all kind of knew it in the back of our mind as in the education that it was happening, right? But if we wanted to press on the importance of it to our student populations, the information needed to be out there. And so it's all about information sharing. I'll tell you that I homeschool one of my children, and I do approach a lot of the state websites to find information that I could teach my kids. So I go to the state parks website for state, parks information and curriculum that's already on there. It's been already formulated, makes it so much easier. There's a huge, population of homeschoolers in our state. My other son goes to regular public school and he gets these lessons online when his teacher finds them. It's less work that the teacher has to do to put a curriculum together, but that teacher finds that it's a very important subject. They'll find their curriculum for it. So that I wanted to add that to Frank's part, but as a homeschool mom. But I do want to say that school board members are busy. But right now in this pandemic, there's been a huge shift in infrastructure for information sharing, because the only information you could share would be virtually or in a non-face-to-face person environment, right? So those infrastructures are there. It's just piggybacking and getting that information into those infrastructures, whether through their email system that the district has to get information out. I know a lot of the census information went out that way to a lot of school districts. Things of that nature that are already in place that wouldn't necessarily give school districts more work. It's just a matter of getting information out there through those systems. And also one thing that I propose to my board of directors, if I'm allowed, is having information sessions just for trustees so that when they're out there engaging their communities, that they can let people know, hey, they're elected officials, so they have the trust of the public. And say, you elected me, I'm now sharing this information with you that's very important to our school district and very important to our state. So it wouldn't necessarily be giving them a lot more to do. It's just taking advantage of the protocols and infrastructures that are out there ready to get information out there.
Let me just jump in. I've noticed that a lot of the PTAs are getting more people involved virtually at meetings than actually go in person to a meeting. And so getting information on their agenda, even if it's a small snippet, builds awareness.
Thank you. I was going to ask Carol if you could add the parent perspective, because I know parents are overwhelmed, and but I think there's opportunity for them to be engaged, and folks, it seems like we're hungry.
Sort of an advocacy group of parents also. It's about a list of maybe, 800 to 1,000 parents throughout the state that if we get the go-ahead, we were going to share it with them because their mindset is already there.
Great. We would love to connect with that list for sure.
The one thing that I have to give you a heads up on is the PTA never shares lists or email addresses. So it all goes directly through the PTAs.
Perfect.
Same with the school districts. It goes directly through the school districts.
Yeah.
Great. And I think we are sort of hearing that from a lot of folks. And so to the extent that we can get sort of a packet of things, some sort of stage ready materials to distribute, for our key messengers, our trusted messengers to send out to their stakeholders. I think that's probably looking to be one of our most effective strategies. So definitely understand that.
If you created, for example, a social media campaign, that gave you something to send out once every week with a slightly different message that caught someone's eye, that would be helpful.
Definitely. Definitely. All right. I saw, oh yeah. Raquel, did you want to join in? And I saw Commissioner Yee and Sedwani.
I just wanted to add that the social media campaigns are great right now, especially because parents that weren't engaged on social media are now engaged on social media because they're trying to get information on the school district's food distributions, the community resources, the testing, the vaccines. So all that is out there at perfect time for it to be taken advantage of. The infrastructure's there and people are actually looking at it.
Perfect. All right. I saw Commissioner Yee and then Commissioner Sedwani.
Yes, thank you to our panel for coming today. I'm wondering if you could comment on local redistricting, school board districts. And I'm sure it's different in all the different districts across the state. We're pretty siloed, right? We don't interact with local redistricting efforts, even though our work is so similar. But from a citizen and from a parent point of view, it's all redistricting, I suppose. I'm wondering if you have any, could tell us about, kind of that landscape of local redistricting, and just, I don't know, any advice about how to position ourselves in parents' minds, in citizens' minds, as we do our work, in parallel, but not really in connection with those efforts.
So I can say that a lot of the districts in our regions that have gone through the redistricting process has been pretty positive because the results end up with the results they're supposed to produce, right? More representation that's indicative of the populations they're in. So I don't think there's a negative connotation to anything redistricting. Parents, I think, will feel like they just need to be educated at that extra level. This is a different redistricting process, but this also helps with the representation for our state. It would just be a matter of differentiating that point, but they will, I think, in those districts where they've already gone through the process, they may have a little more insight on what exactly is done to redistrict, but also already have the information as to why it's so important.
I would say that for most parents, this is something that they really aren't very familiar with. They're familiar with the census, but they're not really familiar with, okay, now what happens? And getting some explanatory information out to them that, we did the census to find out, who lives where and what it looks like. And now our mission is to make sure that your voices are fairly heard. The fairness of it, I think, resonates. Unlike a lot of other states where we have other ways of districting, California has an outstanding process for making sure that it's fair and it's non-political. And I think that's really something parents need to understand.
And that's where I think the beauty of student created projects or campaigns, as you were talking social media campaigns, that's what we wanted for the census through the curriculum that we created and that guide. Sometimes, if we think back to anti-smoking campaigns or recycling campaigns or any of those, the students were really the ones that were the message, carriers, back to the parents and back home. So if we're able to have students become more aware, maybe mini experts in what this process is, they could speak to their parents, they could speak to their community. Even, as you were talking in my head, I'm thinking a one pager or a poster or something like that would help explain it in what I like to call 8th grade language, explain it to where anybody can kind of get it and see it and understand it. I think that could be a great way to do that. Plus, as Raquel was saying, districts that have gone through this process, that they can be a huge benefit to, okay, so what were some of the pitfalls? What are some of the successes? What are some of the things to think of as we're going through this process? What does it look like? And I think that could be a very meaningful thing to do as well.
Great. And if I could also add, my family is all educators, all teachers, and how I have explained redistricting and the distinction between sort of the local redistricting efforts, especially at the school level, and our own statewide redistricting is that the local pieces I've said are the nuts and bolts of education, right? Sort of curriculum and programs and sort of how your local schools are run. And the statewide, as it relates to schools, is really a lot about funding. And so those are the two pieces, right? Both are equally important. It's super important that you engage in both, and they sort of they're parallel and have different sort of ultimate goals in terms of what may hook a parent to engage both processes. So thank you for all those comments. Commissioner Sidwani?
Thank you. Well, first, I just wanted to thank you all so much for being here today. This panel was awesome. And thank you for all of the work that you do. I mean, I think doing any of this engagement and educational work now during the pandemic, it's heroic work. So thank you for that. And also a big thank you for helping us make these connections. You know, I think the idea of reaching out to schools was brought to us several months ago, and it seemed like a really daunting task because there are so many different school districts out there. There are so many players statewide that we would potentially have to reach out to locally. So it's really helpful to know about these kind of statewide connections. For the redistricting standpoint, myself and Commissioner Akutagawa are tasked with Orange County. So if you have contacts for OC, we would definitely take those. But my question, it actually is a follow-up to Commissioner Sinai's regarding the timeline. It's extraordinarily exciting at the idea of creating curriculum. I should mention I'm a mom, and myself, I have 3 school-aged kids, all in public school. So I absolutely love the idea of developing the curriculum, but I'm just trying to think through our timeline and the timeline in general, right? So if it takes us 6 to 8 weeks to create such curriculum, it's realistically going to be prepared for next school year, which isn't too late because of the census delay. We will definitely still be out there, but we'll also be doing a lot of outreach during the summers. And I wanted to ask, what's the best way to still connect and capitalize on that school-based communities throughout the summertime when we're going out and beginning to do our community input sessions? Like what are some of those ways that we might still be able to tap into all of the communities that you serve and are working with?
This is a guess, but I anticipate that because of the pandemic, many school districts are going to be having more robust summer programs and doing a lot of outreach to parents to explain what's happening, where you can pick up your food, what the curriculum is, who's on distance learning, who isn't on distance learning. So there's got to be a lot of outreach, both from school boards and from parent organizations to support parents. So it's not as if school closes down, it's just going to be on and on. So I think being aware of that is important.
I would say for sure, connect with the expanded learning programs for the summer. So 21st Century federal programs and ACES, which is After School Education and Safety, ASES. I was a regional lead and over the state leads for that. So there is a network of regional leads for these expanded learning programs that are operating during the summer. Much as Carol's saying, they're providing 3 to 6 hours of enrichment and support and programming to students. Parents have to, of course, sign the students in and sign them out. So you've got a, hate the term, but captive audience as they're there. That's the thing that we were really looking at, is go where the parents are going to be. Particularly, expanded learning programs are for everybody, but they're also prioritized for some of the most needy populations, some of the most diverse and populations that might benefit most from a really robust and good redistricting process. So I would say connecting with those expanded learning programs I have the contacts at the State Department of Ed and in my office as well, kind of our local ones, where I'm happy to make those connections for you and with you as well, because there's a ton of funding going into those summer programs for expanded learning. that would be, off the top of my head, that would be like a great way, because students are going to be doing that all year round, particularly now, as Carol's saying, with what's happening. And I think that's a very easy connect to make, and a great place to be able to distribute information, or even as we have, whether it's content and whatever, to be able to engage students can engage in projects in that summer program, and be able to kind of do some of that as well.
I have one other idea. It's very strong in San Francisco, and I think it's probably strong throughout the state, is YMCAs provide very many of the after-school programs, at least in our community. And they also have programs for civic learning for teenagers, where they prep kids to go to a state conference in Sacramento. And this might be just the thing that kids might get interested in. So I think reaching out to the statewide YMCA and then reaching out to the major hubs might be fruitful.
Great. Commissioner Anderson. Chair Anderson.
Thank you all for this presentation. It's wonderful to hear, and the great excitement that you bring to the entire field of the education. It's really very palpable. Which is great. We appreciate that. I actually have a couple of questions more specific, and it's actually, and Carol, you have this, we actually got a wonderful map. I'm just wondering if there is actually a list of these, because some of my outreach areas I'm touched with are the Amador, Alpine, Calaveras, and I don't know what number that is, so I'm wondering if there's actually a list that goes along with this map.
There actually is. If you go on the California State PTA website and look up, I think it's PTA districts, there's a map, and on the map, I think the map I gave you had numbers on it or not?
Well, it does, and some of them aren't there. So that's where.
Okay, so it has numbers. And then below that, it has a list of the district PTAs, and you can get an idea of what areas they cover.
Right. Okay, perfect. And then Frank, you actually also mentioned this group called like Click, is it? One thing that the three of you are doing are wonderful, but you do use a lot of abbreviations that we're not all familiar with. We all do that. And I was just wondering if you could tell us what that one was, please, so we could.
Yeah, so CLICK is, it's an acronym, of course, for Content Literacy, Inquiry, and Citizenship. Those are the four major shifts in the history social science framework. And dare I say, since I used to work at the State Department of Ed, one of the things that they make you do is make everything into an acronym. So we created the CLICK project. Our cheesy tagline is that we help history social science click for teachers and students. But that's a group of individuals that I have been working with. We've been building their capacity to support students and teachers across the state. And I can put in there, it's CaliforniaHSS.org is our website. Let me see, I'll put that in the chat. I think that might work there. You can search in there as well. But up at the top of that page, there's a link to Click Leads, and those are across the state. We have 11 regions that the county superintendent regions, and so you can contact any of those individuals, and they're our leads. So they're kind of my conduit to the thousands of teachers across the state, particularly in history social science. So there's lots of other resources that are there, other things. You can see some of our distance learning resources and all of that. But the Click Leads are the individuals that are point people in each of those 11 regions, that they're all out of different county offices of education, but they're like me in that we then kind of convene our teachers and others across the regions for that.
Wonderful. Thank you all. And that's because in terms of looking for how the best way to contact and use these resources, I'm quite sure that our commissioner, our let's see, our outreach group is going to be following up and giving us a lot of your contact information and facilitating that. I'm also going to hope that the materials group works with you, because they've been putting together a lot of documents already, and obviously we need them to be tailored to what you feel is appropriate, because obviously in the field, you know what will resonate with the students. And I really appreciate this information. Thank you very, very much. And I, of course, have the area, as I said, the Alpine, Calaveras, Amador, also Tuolumne, Mariposa, then Mono and Inyo, which is
I might be able to look that up for you right now. Just a second.
And I'm, in terms of, actually, I think Raquel, the redistricting, particularly Mono and Inyo, are they parts of Los Angeles, the school board districts, or I'm wondering if any of those have had redistricting, and if you could maybe give us a list of areas that have actually done some redistricting relatively recently. So
I can try to get a list of that for you.
Thank you so very much. This is
and for the county, excuse me, county superintendent regions, Mono and Inyo are part of Riverside, San Bernardino. So they're in that area. So the contact for, which is our region 10, Barbara Lane is the contact at San Bernardino County, and she'd be able to have connects, to those folks as well, along with the regional leads. I think they've regional leads for after school programs. I think they've kind of rejiggered a little bit some of these things, but you'll see on some of the links that I sent, like what counties they all serve, because they've got a lot of programs in there as well.
Thank you. I would have brought that forward because I believe all the commissioners have the same issues for their particular areas. So thank you very much.
All right. So maybe our last quick question for Commissioner Akutagawa.
Commissioner Vasquez, thank you to the panelists. That was really, really quite helpful in terms of the insights. I have one question that I want to just, I don't think I heard being raised or asked. In our various meetings that we've had conversations with, I've had a conversation with, educators as well too. And one thing that came up, and I'm just curious as to, in this case, it would be interesting to hear from all three of you, depending on what part of the state you're in, obviously each school district itself, is run by maybe a local superintendent, some of which apparently are going to be more supportive than other areas which may be just completely not so supportive of the redistricting efforts and redistricting education. I am curious as to your experience with that, any recommendations. There may not be a way around it, to bring redistricting education or opportunities for students to learn more, but I would be interested to hear that perspective. And then one specific question for Carol, you mentioned YMCA. I am curious about, some of the other student kind of, both national and statewide organizations like the Boys and Girls Clubs, Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, Girls Inc., those, and what your recommendations may be from a parent perspective about accessing those for civic education as well.
All of the above. Angela mentioned Ed 100. They have a conference that they hold in, I think it's June, where they have, I don't know, maybe over 1,000 kids participate, where they learn more about government. And it just went through my mind that if there are particular opportunities that you wanted to offer to these students for engagement, maybe we could make connect those students to it, but there has to be something, I want to volunteer and here's what I can do through the commission sort of thing. So if that's something that you have, I could use students to do whatever, then I can check to see whether we can help in some way. I'm wearing a different hat now.
Your question, I'd say, you mentioned Boy Scouts, so I'm a Boy Scout mom. I'm a Scout master, so I know the boys right now, especially with the pandemic, they're looking at ways of earning badges, merit badges, and this information would definitely help them get out their civic engagement merits. But aside from that, when it comes to school boards, I'd say the superintendent is usually the how of our how things happen, but our board members are the what they want to happen. And if this is a priority of a school board, which is an elected body of 5 or 7, you'd get at least part of the board, if not all the board, try to prioritize this and get the superintendent to do it. They're the what of how to get this information out there. And currently, I think a lot of our trustees value the process of the census and redistricting because it affects them and it affects funding mechanisms for our school districts. So definitely something that I think you brought up is very valid, but because there are elected bodies, they are accountable to the constituency, and I believe our constituency would like this information, especially in the state of California.
And we've worked with a lot of districts across the state to pass, this was in the past, civic learning resolutions. So you'll have a lot of boards that'll pass a resolution stating their support for greater student involvement in the community and greater civic engagement. So this is a great way to kind of leverage that and come back around and say, so you've made these resolutions that our kids, that your students, our communities need to be more involved civically. This is one great way to do it. So it's a way to help them realize, those resolutions that they make. And the message that we carried, we didn't get a lot of pushback on the census. We got some in some areas, but the way that we really approached that was, number one, it's happening, period. Whether or not you participate in the census is happening. There's not going to be a campaign to not do it. And so the most important thing that we focus on is information about it. What is the process? What does it look like? And how can you be involved in it? So we really took a kind of, like you are all taking this kind of apolitical, stance on it. We're saying it's important to be counted, because whether or not you're counted, it's still happening. And so this is what happens if we don't have a complete count. I would say it'd be the same way. The process is going to happen as it's going to happen. It's going to happen with or without your input. And it would be much better if it had your input than not. So that's really the message that we took. And it's not going out there saying anything more than it's super important to be involved in the process. And that's really it. That was our message.
Great. Thank you so much to our panelists. Again, incredibly helpful information. I am sure we have a couple of committees who will probably be reaching back out to you to get some specific contact information, and also likely be working together in the future to make sure we get out our information, social media campaigns, etc., out to your various networks. So again, thank you so much on behalf of the commission for giving us an hour of your time.
Thank you. And I just texted all my leads about creating some curriculum. So we're looking at that right now as we're going. So sorry, I was looking down while we're doing it, but I wanted to seize the opportunity. So
perfect. All right.
I just wanted to echo the thanks from. I just want to echo the thanks from Commissioner Vasquez to Carol, Frank, and Raquel. It's been great working with you, and I look forward to working with you further. And I wanted to thank you again for being so open to our last minute having to reschedule, and you responded quickly. And so we thank you so much for your support and for all this information. It's very helpful to our effort. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Group, at this time, it is 11 o'clock. We need to take a 15-minute break. And so let's be back at 11:18, and then we can sort of wrap things up. Welcome back from break, everyone. As you might see, we just completed our education panel. If you were watching yesterday, we basically went through most of the agenda. So at this point, we really don't have any other outstanding items that we need to address. And I'm going to take some questions. So basically for the panelists, the public who's watching, the plan is to take some questions. We do have one last little specific item about our times of meetings from yesterday. and then in public comment. So that's sort of the plan, and we will be ending early. So with that in mind, commissioners, do we have any questions or any items that we want to discuss? Commissioner Sinai and Commissioner Fernandez.
Just as a follow-up to the panel that we just had, I wanted to know, I didn't quite want to, I meant to ask, but do they need funding to create the curriculum? You know, what do we need to do to launch the curriculum development and supporting that?
Do we have an answer on that one? Is that Commissioner Fernandez?
Sorry, I think I'm hiding in the tomato field or something. I'm not sure. Yes, when I met with Frank a couple times, he did mention that they had funding for that. So he was very excited about developing this curriculum. So what I plan to do is to continue that conversation with Frank, as well as just continue build that partnership that we have, because I really do feel this is a good way for us to get the information out to as many people as we can through the school system. So it's just maintaining engagement with them. Thank you.
Wonderful. And Commissioner Fernandez, you are part of the materials subcommittee as well, correct? Wonderful. So you have a direct link on that as well. Excellent. Any other items? Oh, well, sorry. Go ahead, Commissioner Fernandez.
Yeah, I just wanted to know if, based on our new schedule for the meetings for April and May, maybe if Commissioner Yee and I can work on dropping in those chairs and vice chairs, so we kind of have an idea of what it looks like for the next couple months, if that's all right with everyone.
I just did mention it to Russell that he has the fun joy of putting that together. So thank you. And that's actually that's the one item I wanted to talk about. Remember, we said the 1 or 1:30 start time. But are there any other items of substance before we just do that last one, and we might get public comment? Because I know listening to calendaring and timing like that is like watching grass grow. So I didn't really want to necessarily subject the public to any more of that. Any other items? And let's then actually, could we go ahead and ask for public comment at this time then? Is that Katie? Are you?
You sure can ask for that, Chair. All right. In order to maximize transparency and public participation in our process, the commissioners will be taking general public comment by phone. To call in, dial the telephone number provided on the live stream feed. It is 877-853-5247. When prompted, enter the meeting ID number provided on the live stream feed. It is 989-3812-5973 for this meeting. When prompted to enter a participant ID, simply press the pound key. Once you have dialed in, you will be placed in a queue. To indicate you wish to comment, please press star 9. This will raise your hand for the moderator. When it is your turn to speak, you will hear a message that says, "The host would like you to talk. Please press star 6. If you would like to give your name, please state and spell it for the record. You are not required to provide your name to give public comment. Please make sure to mute your computer or live stream audio to prevent any feedback or distortion during your call. Once you are waiting in the queue, be alert for when it is your turn to speak, and again, please turn down the live stream volume. We do not have anybody in the queue at this time.
Well, while we're waiting, the issue is if the timing. Do we want to start at 1 or 1:30? And basically, just a quick breakdown on the way our business meetings work is we do 6 hours worth of meetings in a typical day. They're broken into hour-and-a-half chunks with 15-minute breaks in between 2 sessions and an hour lunch. So with that setup, if we start at 1, we'd be breaking for dinner at 4:15 to 5:15. Or we would just do 3 90-minute sessions and go 6 to 7, ending at 8:30. Otherwise, if we start at 1:30, the break would be from 4:45 to 5:45, ending at 8:30. I'm sorry, yes, at ending at 9.
I'm sorry, Chair. I don't mean to interrupt. I do have a caller in the queue, but I wanted to make the announcement. If you would like to make a comment, please press *9 to raise your hand, indicating you wish to share. So they have not raised their hand yet. I just wanted to give them that instruction. Oh, now they've raised their hand.
Thank you.
And the floor is yours.
Hello, this is Renee Westelusk. I just have a question for the commissioners. Do you know if it's the intent of the 3 guest panelists on education, if they are going to reach out to all school districts to try to get them involved in the state of California, or is it just going to be certain regions?
Sorry, Commissioner Fernandez, would you like to answer that one?
Yes, I will be following up with Frank on that specifically to see if it would be better for us to reach out to the county offices of education, and hopefully that will be the case versus every single school district. So we'll get more information on that. So thank you for that and that question.
Okay, thank you.
Chair, that was the only person in the queue, and the instructions have been completed on the stream for a few minutes now.
Thank you, Katie. Well, at this point, just sort of gathering, I just want to throw that out to Commissioner Kennedy.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, we can have 3 90-minute blocks before taking an hour break. I don't know that there's any reason why we would have to take the hour break in the exact middle of the meeting. So we could either start at 1:30 and go to 6:30 with 2 15-minute breaks in that span, and then break from 6:30 to 7:30, and then have the final 90-minute block from 7:30 to 9, or shift it all half an hour earlier.
Right. Yeah, that's the other idea. So basically, it's like to go from 1 to 8:30 or 1:30 to 9, and then but it would essentially put us at, which we haven't done. This is just for people to consider. Is essentially you could do, if you went to the 1:30, you could do like the same block structure we would currently be doing, or if you do it 1, you would essentially do the 3 blocks and then have dinner 6 to 7, and the last one would be 7 to 8:30. So we don't need to. Commissioner Fernandez.
Oh no, I was just going to say that I agree with Commissioner Kennedy. We could do the 3 hour-and-a-half blocks. I would personally, I prefer to start earlier at 1, only because I know sometimes we do go beyond. And if we schedule it later, then we're going, potentially past 9 o'clock at night. So that's just my preference. Either way.
Well, right now it is down as 1. And I just wanted to, because we've been talking about both, and I wanted to bring that back and give the commission the option. I would recommend sticking with the 1 o'clock and doing the 3 sessions, going 6 to 7 and 7 to 8, and 6 to 7 would be the dinner time. The three 90-minute sessions, and then our last 90-minute session would be from 7 to 8:30. Commissioner Turner.
And I'd like to ask that our meeting end by 8 p.m., the last session be from 7 to 8 p.m.
Okay, that would be a little shorter meeting, but
yes, it would. It would be a shorter evening, shorter meeting in the evening time.
Well, any objection? Seeing none. Commissioner Akutagawa.
I guess I think formally, I guess we could always schedule it for 8, but the reality is, and I guess this is maybe where we need to discuss, is the reality is that we oftentimes, do go beyond the at least the estimated time that we think we should be finished by. So if that's going to become a problem, then I think we do need to really have a discussion about either the way the agenda is built or how the meeting is managed or what time we start.
Well, these will be a trial, and we're going to try these because they are later start, and this is something we will have to address. In terms of our current meetings, if we want to address that, certainly the function of the meeting, there have been items of improving certain and trying to put it more work on the subcommittee, or certain ways to address that. Starting it earlier would be essentially 9. We could look into those things like that. At this point, I wasn't planning on entertaining that unless we would. Does the commission want to discuss this matter? Not really. Okay. Oh, Commissioner Turner.
Yeah, I'd just like to say if we can arrange it for those that are bivocational, it makes for extremely long days to start at 7 and end meetings at 8:30 and 9 o'clock. It's a half-hour difference. And I just think in the evening, if we practice being a little bit more succinct in our thoughts, knowing that we have that time period in the evening, I think it's totally doable. And of course, where there is exception, something that just did not allow for it, that's a different matter. We accommodate that as we have been accommodating. But as a plan, I think we can plan to, I'm hoping that we can plan to end by 8 p.m.
Yeah, and I'm seeing a couple of thumbs up on that one too. That sounds good to me. So let's go with the 1 to 8 time frame. Just realizing that after dinner, which I agree, we'll be a bit more tired. Now, the one issue is, and I think we'll wait on public feedback for that, quite frankly, because the whole idea of shifting to the afternoon is to get more people in the evening slots. And I would be very interested to hear if we do get more people, or if, quite frankly, the business meeting part of it, they're not that interested in. I mean, they are, but not as interested as once we start getting into public input. Then those will really have to shift to accommodate people who are regular, 9 to 5 job type people, as well as everyone else. So at this point, I'm saying let's stick with the 1 and have it end at 8. We'll adjust the meeting accordingly, and we can address this after we've done a few trials of those dates. So with that, any objection or any other items to discuss? Oh, Commissioner Kutagawa.
I just have a quick question around the earlier comment around the panelists reaching out to the school districts. I think, Commissioner Fernandez, you said that you were going to be reaching out to the panelists to ask about that. I know that as part of the outreach that in my zones, we have talked to some of the school districts. So I'm just curious as to, I think maybe trying to avoid overlap and other confusion. So the staff do know what meetings have been conducted with whom, and I would just want to just let you know so that you could take a look at that. So as you're looking at how you're going to do other outreach, I would not want to have cross purposes, kind of make for confusion.
Well, thank you. Actually, that list is available for who has been contacted. Essentially, all the different people. Is that correct? I believe that's in Director Hernandez would know about that. I guess it's the outreach contact list in terms of are there any boards or things like that. I believe that's available to all the commissioners. Is that correct?
We're going to go ahead and make that available. We're still cleaning it up because it has a lot more information than necessary. And our goal is to discuss it with the outreach an engagement subcommittee on how to post it on the website and what details we need to include.
I'm sorry, that there are little like two bits of information there, though, just in terms of our the document that does have personal information and contacts. That that is just, that's not a full public, because obviously it's private information. It's just in terms of who has actually been contacted, so we aren't like talking to the same person by multiple different groups and say, hey, we're just reaching out to talk to you, when essentially they've already been talked, like the cross purposes, as Commissioner Akutagawa said.
So we're talking about two different things then. We're talking about the list of the contacts that we are already capturing some of that information. And if any commissioners do have contacts that they have not already provided, please feel free to send them to Marcy. We are collecting all that information that the commissioners can then take a look at to make sure they're not doubling up on anybody. But also I heard the conversation about putting that information, some of that information, not all of that information, on who we're reaching out to. And that piece will go through the subcommittee to determine how we and what we put out there.
Perfect. That's exactly it. Thank you very much, Dorothy. And with that, any other, Commissioner Turner, I thought I saw your hand. Did you have another item? No.
No, I did not.
Thank you. Commissioner Yee.
Yes, when this full commission meeting is recessed, if I could ask the Legal Affairs Committee to immediately reconvene, and we can, we'll be continuing to discuss item 10 on the agenda. I'm wondering if we could actually even do that today rather than tomorrow, but if we could immediately reconvene to decide on our exact plan for that further discussion of the Legal Affairs Committee agenda item number 10, which is the last item for this meeting.
You could do it in the connection with this notice meeting if you wish.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Yee, you do have an agendized meeting for tomorrow. Is that the one that you're saying, and just shift that over for today, or I'm not quite clear on?
Right. Well, actually, as it happens, the agenda, when it got built, those items ended up as an agenda item number 10 for the full commission rather than as a separate agenda for just the Legal Affairs Committee. It works either way. We're allowed by code to post either way. But as this meeting is ending early, I'm wondering, I'd like the Legal Affairs Committee to discuss whether to address those matters today, in fact, and not have to meet tomorrow, or to go ahead and meet tomorrow.
Great. Okay, thank you. And then, so what will happen now for the commission is I plan to recess the full commission meeting, and at what point there'll be a break, whichever the Legal Affairs Committee would like to establish, and then we'll go into their Legal Affairs Committee meeting. So that is the plan. Are there any other comments or anything for this matter of business? Commissioner Ahmad.
Just a quick question for council for clarification on my part. If the Legal Affairs Committee meets on this agenda, does that mean they would still have to have quorum?
Yes, because there are 3 or more, they need to have 2 members being present.
Oh, okay. I meant like, would they still need to have quorum out of the 14 since we are?
No.
Okay.
The rules permit a subcommittee to meet at a regularly noticed commission meeting so long as it's on the commission's agenda.
Got it. Thank you.
Commissioner Akutagawa?
Yeah, I guess another maybe a process question as well too. I noticed on the first page of the agenda that the Legal Affairs Committee meeting is noted to be scheduled for tomorrow from 9:30 to 12:30. And so, but to Commissioner Yee's point, it is an agendized item on our larger business meeting. So I understand his, I think, question about trying to wrap up the Legal Affairs Committee. Is that, given the scheduling, that people who might have wanted to listen in on that meeting, is that, I guess, a problem, or is that go against what Bagley-Keene allows for? I think I'm just trying to understand the process for other future meetings, like the public input design meeting.
when this came up yesterday, I took a look back at Bagley Keene, and what it says is, notice of a meeting of a state body that complies with this section shall also constitute notice of a meeting of an advisory body of that state body, provided that the business to be discussed by the advisory body is covered by the notice of the meeting of the state body, provided that the time and place of the state advisory body's meeting is announced during the open and public state body's meeting. So it's legit.
Yeah, so basically the reason why that he could have this during this meeting is because the same topic. It's like if you look at both agendas, it's in the agenda for this current meeting. If it was not, it was a different agenda, and no, he could not do that. Is that basically the correct interpretation, Ms. Thompson?
I believe, if I understood you correctly, yes.
So that's the, and since it is, basically, essentially, we did copy it over. It's the same agenda. So and I appreciate, thank you everyone for trying to get the rules clear, because these are important issues, and it will come up as we go into this public input design. With that in mind, I believe we can recess this meeting. Thank you very much.
Adjourn.
Recess.
Yes.
Adjourn.
Yes, Commissioner Toledo.
I believe we're actually going to meet tomorrow for legal affairs instead of today, just for notice purposes. Given that the public was our regularly scheduled time was going to be 9:30. So if that's, I believe that the three of us have concurred on that.
Okay. Well, that's okay. So
that's fine.
So the public know that they're not continuing. The legal affairs is not continuing the meeting today. It will reconvene tomorrow at 9:30.
30.
So
9:30 as regularly scheduled.
As regularly scheduled. Okay. And but regardless, because that is a part of this entire meeting, it's a continuation of this meeting. That is why I recess the full commission meeting, and they will reconvene the committee meeting. And then when they adjourn, the entire meeting will be over as they adjourn tomorrow. So with that, I recess the full commission meeting. Thank you very much, and good luck to the Legal Affairs Committee tomorrow.
Thank you, Chair.